Are you taking a scenic vacation through verdant Elheim and looking for some unit builds to accompany you along the way? Well, look no further, because today, that's exactly what we're going to present for you. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
Unicorn Overlord.
Hello everyone. As I always say, if you enjoy my content, my coverage of Unicorn Overlord, or other games in the overall sphere of strategy RPGs or gaming in general, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So what is the topic of today's episode of Steal These Squads? Well, 3 mid-game builds that I think are going to see you fairly safely through Elheim thanks to their varied different uses. We're looking today at a Dragoon squad with Lex's Lancers, as I like to call it. Then we're going to be looking over here at Leonhardt the Doom Knights unit. This is the Freezer Burn squad. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then finally, down here, a little squad with Berengaria and Virginia that I'm calling the Affliction Angels. We're going to go through all 3. You'll see some gameplay footage on screen as we talk about what makes these squads tick and why I like them so much. Let's get down to it with Lex's Lancers. The idea of this squad focuses around Alexandra the Wyvern Master, or really any Wyvern Master in general. Why? Because of the Dragoon's War Spear. So the Dragoon's War Spear is a very nice little item that you can pick up in Drakkenhold that gives you plus 15 max HP, plus 5 initiative, and 20 physical attack, as well as the Dragoon Dive ability. What Dragoon Dive does is, it is a ranged charge attack with a physical potency of 100, a hit count of 1, and a hit rate of 100%. It attacks all enemies, not an entire row, all enemies, and gives you plus 50 potency versus ground-based targets. So realistically, you're looking at a physical potency of 150 against most units in the game. Now, notably, you cannot evade or use passive skills while charging, so the rest of the squad is set up around making sure that Alexandra stays alive and is able to trigger Dragoon Dive for as much damage as possible. To make these Dragoon Dives hit as hard as possible, we have a Carnelian Pendant, so we can charge up Dragoon Dive and then still have 1 AP left for a Diving Thrust to clean something up in the end of a fight, and the Warrior's Medallion, increasing our attack and our crit rate by a fairly decent amount. We also have a Silken Scarf, so that if enemies are still swinging after we've cast our Dragoon Dive, we do have extra evade. This is really more of just a backup plan piece, not something that comes into play too often, but it is nice when it's there. You can potentially sub this out for something that's going to deal more damage, or maybe grant an extra AP, PP, things like that, but I like it here just as a little bit of a safety measure. Now, to help facilitate the triggering of Dragoon Dive, that's where the rest of the squad comes in, and we start with Lex the Vanguard. You can, of course, use any Vanguard here. Lex just happens to be the one that I was utilizing at this point with this squad, and he's equipped with a pretty standard loadout. He has the Sanguine Blade to enable Sanguine Attack, allowing him to heal his own HP when he attacks enemies. The Holy Knight's Shield, which gives a good amount of defensive stats. Very important for this, as our frontliner is just Lex, and we don't have a lot of support for him to keep him alive. So being able to protect himself is going to be very important. The Holy Knight's Shield is extra nice because it also gives him some extra HP back when he attacks with Sanguine Attack, so, you know, a little bit of extra healing there, never hurts. And gives Holy Guard, block an enemy attack with a medium guard, and prevents debuffs. This is very nice because it means that Lex is not as likely to be, like, knocked out of a position where he's going to be able to actually guard for his other allies, and can keep him functioning a bit better than he otherwise would. We are then, of course, also rocking arrow cover to prevent Alexandra from being sniped by anything too unwieldy. And we have Guarding Fighter, granting us an extra physical attack and critical damage when we guard. Notably, I meant to actually change this before I started the video, but then forgot. I want to change this so that it's only activatable if we have more, or PP of 3 or more, maybe 2 or more. Probably 2 or more. The idea here being that we'll be able to Holy Guard, we'll be able to Guarding Fighter, and then we'll still have a passive point left over for arrow cover, and that should protect you against most squads that have an archer. You know, if you're throwing this unit up against an enemy squad that has like 3 archers in it, then you're just asking for trouble, and you can potentially switch your tactics around as needed. But this setup should cover the most wide variety of enemies. Then we have Andre the Rogue. This is kind of an interesting pick, but I like it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm a big fan of like first aid medic rogues. I haven't really talked about it that much in videos, but the idea here being that you can use your rogues to passive steal off of the enemy, reduce their passive points, and give themselves a nice surplus. So that way at the end of the battle, they're likely to have at least 1 point left over that they can then use first aid on, or use with first aid, I should say, to heal up a member of your squad. We also have Powerful Call here to be able to boost our physical attack for an ally's next attack, specifically targeting our flyer. So this will boost Alexandra and nobody else to make her Dragoon Dive even more powerful than it already would be. And then, of course, Evade. And we have Andre positioned behind Lex, since someone pretty much wants to be behind Lex. And this way, if Lex is getting attacked by piercing attacks, Andre can evade out of the way, which is nice. We just have a basic Black Iron Sword on him. Nothing particularly major here. I'm not really worried about the damage that he's dealing or any special basic attacks that he'd be getting off of his weapon. Passive Steel and Toxic Throw are more than enough. Finally, we have Rurik the Elven Archer, and this is a little bit of a fun include. I do like having an Elven Archer here. He's got a standard Greatwood Bow just for good damage, a Carnelian Pendant so he has extra Wind Arrow attacks, a Mercenary's Eye Patch so we're more likely to get crits, and then a Lucky Coin to get even more crits and evasion. The idea here is that during the actual battle, Rurik is going to be out here sniping people with wind arrows, reducing their evasion so that they aren't as likely to dodge the Dragoon Dive once it pops off, and potentially picking off anything squishy or flying in the enemy squad that might be the most damaging things for them. He's good at picking off mages, flyers, griffins, enemy wyverns, all that type of good stuff. And then we have 2 different passive skills that are quite nice as well. Selfless Heal is going to be triggering at the end of the fight. We'll talk about how we're going to have that go off in a second. And Quick Cure is very nice because it's removing debuffs from an ally and granting them immunity to a debuff as well. Most often, this is going to be used on Lex. If he winds up running out of Holy Guards, then we can have Rurik here to be able to still take debuffs off of him so he can still be up and defending and fighting. And when we look at that Selfless Heal, it says it activates after you are healed and restores minor HP to all allies and removes all debuffs. What does that entail? Well, that's where the first aid kit comes in. We have our first aid kit set up to prioritize our archer here, Rurik, so that at the end of a fight, we'll pop first aid kit, heal Rurik, and then Rurik will heal everyone else. It's a nice little way at the end of combat to heal up any chip damage and patch up Lex, who's by all means probably taking the brunt of the hits, and is very useful. Like, this can be a little bit of a hard ability to activate sometimes, but the way that I've found that is the most consistent without just having something like a cleric that can do a party-wide heal, at which point you wouldn't really need Selfless Heal to begin with because it would just be redundant if your cleric just healed everybody. This way, you don't need to put a cleric in the team. You can have another unit like a rogue or anyone else with first aid kit, have them target Rurik, and then heal the entire squad. It's slightly unwieldy, but it is a nice way to get a party-wide heal without having to invest in a specific type of unit or a more costly ability, which I very much enjoy. This squad is great. It's a very solid all-rounder squad, and while it does have some issues in Elheim, particularly because of the magic damage that elves bring to the table and how that can cause problems for Lex, it's good before Elheim, it's definitely good after Elheim, and as long as you're careful about what types of squads you're fighting, it's perfectly fine in Elheim as well. I'm a big fan of this one, and as one of the very first combo teams that I was able to put together, I have a particular fondness for it. Moving on to Leonhardt's unit, this is where we've got the Freezer Burn comp. This is a fun one. Let's talk about it. Of course, headlining the team is Leonhardt the Doom Knight, and he is the primary damage dealer as well. He's set up with a Golden Ram Axe for the extra accuracy and defense, as well as good damage, a Templar's Shield for good all-around defensive stats, and extra HP recovery, which is going to be very important. Doom Knights, of course, like to be able to recover a lot of HP very quickly with their attacks or with the support of their allies, as well as a Lapis Pendant and a Carnelian Pendant, so we have the ability to use as much stuff as possible. Our first attack, Dark Flame, is targeting a row with 2+ combatants. This, of course, does deal physical and magical damage, uses part of your own HP to attack a row of enemies, and gives +50 potency versus debuffed targets, and inflicts burn. Very nasty attack, very strong attack. I very much enjoy it. We then have Vengeful Axe as just a backup finisher attack, Sanguine Arts so we can restore our own HP if our HP drops low enough, and Vengeance to boost our stats over the course of the fight. Next up, our second most important character here, Karen the Druid. This is very simple. She's built to do one thing: Sandstorm the enemy, and then Quick Curse anyone who tries to attack us after they're not blinded anymore. Sandstorm is a very fun ability that comes from the Dustbound Staff. It inflicts blindness on all enemies. Its hit rate is true. That's it. And because we have a Dove Plume, it's very likely that Karen is going to go first. She goes before anyone else in this squad, and typically before anyone else on the enemy team as well. And that first round of combat, you're really not going to have to worry about taking much damage. Now, you might be thinking, is that not kind of anti-synergistic with Leon? Leon wants to get hits that Vengeance can trigger so that he can start dealing more damage, but that first round of combat is really all about suppressing the enemy and weakening them. then making it set that once they do start swinging, they don't deal too much damage to Leonhardt, and he blows them up in the process. We'll talk about how exactly that works when we get to our sorceress. Then we have Liliane the Bishop. She's set up with a very basic limited heal, where she can just heal all of her allies above their limits. So she pops off, everyone gets a big boost to their HP. Ideally, this is where Leonhardt can get a nice boost that prevents him from being downed, even if he does take a lot of damage, just because he's got so much HP to work with, and again, continues triggering Vengeance. And then we do have a standard array of cleric abilities like Lifesaver to keep herself up, Refresh if Leonhardt or anyone else gets debuffed, Quick Heal if people are taking little bits of damage here and there that we want to heal off. It's very solid all around, and I decided to throw a Mercenary's Eye Patch on here just for the occasional crit heal, because that is really fun when it happens. Finally, Valerie the Sorceress. The most notable piece of gear here is the Frostbrand Tome, which gives Ice Conferral. Ice Conferral, if you were not aware, activates before an ally's physical attack, add magic damage and freeze to an ally's next attack. So, the way this works is we only have one unit with a physical attack in the squad, and that's Leonhardt. That physical attack is Dark Flame. And while it may have a magical potency, it also is considered as a physical attack, so the Frostbrand Tome will trigger on this. What this means is Leonhardt takes some damage, buffs his own attack, the enemies have been blinded, have maybe gotten some hits in because they're able to cure their blind, or they're immune to it or whatever, lands a couple lucky hits on Leonhardt. He procs Dark Flame, charges into the enemy front line to hit an entire row, and right before he lands that shot, with his axe wreathed in flame, Valerie adds a little bit of ice to it. And now the entire enemy front line is simultaneously on fire and frozen. How does that work? Hell if I know, man. It's magic, particularly dark magic, but it is pretty awesome. What this means is that the entire enemy front line is going to be locked down until they start taking damage and get broken out of the ice. That gives you opportunities to heal, to finish topping up your buffs, to get extra AP, passive points, whatever, throw around some magic missiles maybe. And then, once they start taking their actions after they're unfrozen, they will immediately start burning to death. And if anyone managed to survive the initial Dark Flamening, oftentimes the burn is going to be enough to finish them off. And if it's not, Leonhardt is more than equipped to come in and cleave them in half with a Vengeful Axe. This is a ton of fun. I adore this build. It's hysterical having this just absolute looking maniac of a knight go in and somehow put two conflicting status effects on a whole row of enemies while dealing a ton of damage to them in the process. It's great, and it really doesn't matter what type of enemy you're fighting. Physically defense-focused enemies, you've got magic. Magically defense-focused enemies, you've got physical. You can do it all, and Leonhardt has more than enough damage, or any Doom Knight will have more than enough damage to finish the job, while also staying alive because of the support that he's got from the ladies in the backline, which is great. Moving on from ladies in the backline to ladies in the front line, let's talk about the Affliction Angels here. What is the point of this squad? The point of this squad is to be an all-rounder unit that can handle pretty much any variety of enemy squad that comes their way. To do this, we're focusing on two different things. Berengaria and her ability to debuff the entire enemy squad while being able to stun the front line with her Death Spin, and then Virginia, who has her combination of Iron Crusher to destroy armored units and Vertical Edge to take out flyers, making it a pretty solidly versatile team, especially considering how tanky both Virginia and Berengaria are. Backing them up, we've got Dimitri the Rogue and Balder the Elven Fencer, and this is where our afflictions are coming in. Not only can Berengaria stun the entire enemy frontline with her Death Spin, Dimitri can throw out Toxic Throws to poison enemies, making her Death Spin deal even more damage, and Balder can come in and Lightning Blade things, again, allowing Berengaria to deal even more damage, and both of these guys are set up to support the ladies as well. Dimitri is ready with a first aid kit so he can patch up someone who's got the lowest health at the end of the fight, whereas Balder is set up to be able to remove weakness and Sylphic Barrier because it's just a good array of support abilities on Elven Fencers. It's nice that they can deal damage and support their allies simultaneously. As far as our gear is concerned, Virginia has a pretty standard array of tanking gear while still being able to deal damage. The Hallowed Blade makes it so that she gets extra healing when she uses her attacks, which is nice because, again, she's going to be on the front line tanking. She's got extra passive points and guard efficiency and all that type of good stuff off the Blue Rose Shield. She even heals when she guards with this. And then she has the Phantom Knight's Shield to increase her magic defense as well, so that no matter what type of enemy she's being attacked by, she can handle it pretty well. Finally, she has the Retaliation Earrings, so that if she comes in with Maiden's Hammer, her own retaliation attack, she'll deal even more damage to whatever it is that she's hitting. Berengaria, on the flip side, has a pretty solid tanking setup. She's got the Labrys Axe, giving her extra guard rate and initiative, so she's going to come out swinging fairly early. The Dragonbone Great Shield does offset her initiative, but again, Eye of the Warrior Princess tanks the enemy initiative as well, so it's really not a huge deal, while also making her quite tanky and giving her more passive points. The Gauntlet increases her guard rate even more to a whopping 77%. And then I put a Clear Sight Amulet on here just in case we happen to get blinded, especially by something like, I don't know, druids that can do blind or other enemies that can blind you. And she can have immunity to it herself while also removing it from her allies. It's a little bit of a niche piece, but it's a piece that is very vital when you consider how severely this squad would get crushed by blind. So, since she had the free accessory slot, and at this point in the game I was a little limited on what accessories I could pack, I did like having this one. Dimitri is set up with the Rose Knight Sword, so he also has good initiative and accuracy, although again, his damage is really not what I'm concerned about here. He's pretty much just going to be tossing toxic throws around and trying to put as much poison on as many enemies as possible to further empower Berengaria. And Baldur really doesn't have anything too fancy. I mean, he's even rocking the Chloe's Charm because I was just trying to get him leveled up at this point. But the Leaf Brooch makes it so that he can heal himself when he attacks if he happens to take any chip damage, and the Silk Hood is increasing the magic damage that he's dealing with his Lightning Blade. This is a very fun squad. They're really good at shutting down entire groups of enemies and then just crushing them before they get to take any actions. And because Berengaria and Virginia are both so tanky, despite the fact that there's no dedicated healing in this squad, just a little bit here and there that we can get, like Virginia self-healing, Baldur self-healing, Dimitri having the first aid kit to heal up whoever needs it at the end of the fight, they're pretty resilient. And as an all-infantry squad, they have plenty of stamina to go around as well. And that, my friends, are 3 mid-game squads that I put together about partway through Elheim for you to steal. And I highly encourage that you do so because these have been some pretty baller squads. Of course, I have some other units in here as well that y'all have already seen before, such as Bruno's unit and the Super Tax Bros, but these are ones I hadn't really highlighted, and I wanted to take the chance to because they are pretty nice, and they have some slightly unconventional things going on that I think people will enjoy. And, if nothing else, they'll serve as a good baseline for you to build your own squads off of, or even a foundation that you can then develop into something else as you progress further into the game, whatever works for you. If you have any further suggestions about these types of units, any units of your own that you would like to share with me or the community, drop all of that in the comments down below. And if there's any optimizations that you would make here in terms of weapons, accessories, different tactics setups, positioning, classes, all that type of stuff, let me know that as well, because people who are stealing these squads might want to know ways that they can optimize for themselves. With that said, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.